Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings to Madam Atika and my fellow friends. Today we'll be talking about an article called Supply and Demand Shocks in the COVID-19 Pandemic in Industry and Occupation Perspective. First and foremost, I would like to introduce myself and my group mates. I am Hakim and they are Shuhada, Unchaku Ishbala, Pavin and Siti Haja. I move to the next slide. The article was prepared by a group of researchers are Maria del Rio Chanona, Penny Melly, Anton Pichler, Francois Lanford and J. Don Palmer were among the participants. This article was published on 29 August 2020. In the article, they mention about analytic clarity on supply and demand shocks induced by public health initiatives as well as changes in preference caused by illness avoidance. The article calculates supply-side reduction due to the closure of non-essential industry and the workers not being able to perform their activities at home. Demand and number two, demand-side changes due to the people's immediate response to the pandemic, such as a lower demand for goods or services that are likely to put people at risk of infections. This topic emphasizes how supply and demand interact and how the supply shock can cause demand to fall. However, as the people argue here, the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in exogenous and immediate changes in the consumer demand, both in terms of magnitude and composition, as a consumer preference shift in response to factors such as infection risk, lower positive externality in social consumption, and an explicit government guideline. Now I will pass to my friend to continue the presentation.
Article analysis. The economics of supply and demand dictates many issues in the world. The article Supply and Demand Shock in the COVID-19 Pandemic, an Industry and Occupation Perspective by Del Rio Chanona is among many articles that focuses on discussing issues surrounding demand and supply. The article's primary arguments revolve around the first-order supply and demand shocks in the United States economy in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The authors examine the issues from the perspective of the industries and individual occupation. The article's information is relevant to the course in the sense that it addresses demand and supply, which are vital elements in the study of microeconomics. Therefore, examining demand and supply is essential in establishing how the United States economy is faring on during the COVID-19 pandemic. So one of the economic issues in this article, the primary economic issue that is under scrutiny constitutes the first order supply and demand shock of the United States economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. The article is keen to examine the supply shocks in the United States economy by pointing out the issue of the loss of labor, which results from the deaths and illnesses of people. COVID-19 has significantly affected the United States economy by cutting down the supply of laborers. Many people who have fallen sick or died due to contracting the virus, which has led to the reduction in the number of people available for labor. The effects on the economy has been devastating because of the idea that companies are attaining the productivity levels that they used to in the pre-COVID-19 era. Working from home is beginning to become common because most of the health regulation dictates that people should minimize social gatherings as much as possible to ensure the virus does not spread as fast as it is anticipated when people meet. So the graph here shows the deaths in various regions of the United States due to COVID-19. The graph indicates the number of weekly deaths in different religions in the United States due to COVID-19. The graph is useful in demonstrating how COVID-19 has caused many deaths to the extent that laborers are increasingly becoming scarce. Each death experienced every week means that a laborer is lost. On the other hand, the demand shock on the United States economy has significantly affected consumer spending due to the high risk of exposure to COVID-19. When shopping, most customers are increasingly leaning towards abandoning or changing their shopping habits to ensure that they do not expose themselves to the virus. Consequently, due to the fear of exposing themselves to the virus, customers have resulted in a situation where the demand for products has dropped down drastically. The demand shock on the American economy has been of significant influence because as the demand for products is gradually going down, traders are hit hard since they are forced to reduce productivity for fear of having too much stock that could be rendered obsolete due to lower demand of commodities. However, despite the demand and supply shock on the United States economy due to the effect of the COVID-19, a solution lies in masses. A solution exists in the form of vaccination. If everyone can make a point of being vaccinated and the government plays its part of ensuring availability of the vaccine, there is a high chance that the virus will be properly managed. Once the infections are contained through mass vaccination, it will be difficult for the virus to keep registering negative implications on the economy and population residing within the United States. The diagram here indicates the effort made by several countries, including the United States, to conduct mass vaccination to curb the virus. The diagram here is a representation of the countries and their correspondent rate of COVID-19 vaccination. It shows how best countries are trying to vaccinate their citizens to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Such efforts are going to help countries attain low numbers of infection. Therefore, it is essential to note that the United States economy has experienced first-order supply and demand shock resulting from the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. The labor market is experiencing a decrease in personnel due to infection and deaths. Similarly, the demand shock is resulting in a situation where customers are increasingly shying away from purchasing products for fear of being infected once they interact in crowds. Hence, the best solution is to ensure that mass vaccination is implemented in the shortest time possible. Based on the analysis of the article in question, I have learned that demand and supply, being microeconomics elements, have great significance in describing the economy of a country.
On top of that, strong consumption and investment enabled by economic reopening and solid corporate and household balance sheets are bolstering aggregate demand to a degree that has surprised many. Demand deficit can arise from actual and unexpected income risks and higher economic uncertainty. Policies to buffer demand deficit encompass direct or indirect transfers to specific consumers, tax cuts, or social security enhancement. Despite the demand and supply shocks on the United States economy due to the effects of COVID-19, a solution exists in the form of vaccination. If everyone can make a point of being vaccinated and the government plays its part of ensuring availability of the vaccines, there is a high chance that the virus will be properly managed. Once the infections are contained through mass vaccinations, it will be difficult for the virus to keep registering negative implications on the economy and population inside the United States. The diagram indicates the efforts made by several countries, including the United States, to conduct mass vaccination to curb the virus. Therefore, it is essential to note that the United States economy has experienced first-order supply and demand shocks resulting from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The labor market is experiencing a decrease in personnel due to infections and deaths. Similarly, the demand shock is resulting in situations where customers are increasingly shying away from purchasing products for fear of being infected once they interact in crowds. Hence, the best solution is to ensure that mass vaccination is implemented in the shortest time possible.
Hello, Madam Atita. My name is Siti Hajar, and I am going to present about income and employment. So, in this article, it has emphasized the issue on the employability and income of the United States citizen. It was discovered that the nation lost labor due to mortality and infection prior to COVID-19. As a result of death, morbidity to coronavirus disease, and the need to care for sick family members, which the supply of labor during this period was reduced. In certain countries, there will be laws that must be followed by everyone in order to prevent the virus from spreading in the workplace, schools, and etc. Though this technique helps to prevent the virus from spreading to the country's population, it has limited numerous economic activities, resulting in labor shocks. As a result of this circumstance, there has been a shift in population preference, with the usability of healthcare relative to restaurants growing, affecting aggregate demand in the economy. The reduction in consumer spending is caused by immediate shifts of consumption among individual sectors, but also by lower income, increased income insecurity as a result of unemployment, and wealth effects as a result of declining asset values. According to survey research published by the Office for National Statistics, low-wage employees are more severely affected by the COVID-19 issue in terms of lost employment and income. Due to the labor shocks and termination of employment, many people have shifted their demand towards healthcare and essential needs, resulting to a decline in demand for other products and services. This is because people are budgeting and saving money as their pay is being cut or no wage at all in order for businesses to sustain. During the first few weeks and months of the COVID-19 crisis, several nations reacted quickly to give dramatic increase of emergency assistance in order to keep people and businesses afloat, safeguard jobs and incomes, and keep the economy from collapsing. In the coming months, as the COVID-19 pandemic subsides and many countries reopen their economies, policymakers will need to maintain their agility, modifying and adjusting the composition and characteristics of support packages, which targeting support where it is most needed, and encouraging a return to work where possible by the following stipulated rules and regulations. While doing so, it will be critical to begin the process of rebuilding better in order to address the pandemic's deep-rooted labor market fragilities and structural inequalities. Along with the efforts to handle the COVID-19 pandemic's health emergency, several nations have enacted plenty of emergency measures aimed at strengthening business stability due to obligatory business restrictions, quarantines, and plunging activity. Therefore, government-funded short-term labor and pay subsidy programs must be implemented to reduce job losses. These systems, which allow businesses suffering a temporary slowdown in activity to get assistance for a portion of the pay of employees working fewer hours, appear to have avoided a large initial increase in unemployment in these nations. In many nations, expanding the coverage and level of sickness benefits as well as paid sick leave played a significant role in preserving employees' employment, wages, and health.
So hello everyone, my name is Parvin. So now I'm going to talk about the conclusion. So I have 4 main points to talk about in conclusion. First is establish a remote labor index RLI to evaluate the extent reasonable demand shock estimated in an attempt to recognize Miles and Scott 2020 point of demand in many sectors. And the last one is supply and demand restriction. So we establish a remote labor index RLI to evaluate the extent to which workers can do activities related to their occupations at home and identified which industries are categorized as essential versus not essentials in defined supply shock. We also provide reasonable demand shock estimated in an attempt to recognize to some industries may experience early output reduction owing to lack in demand rather than inability to work. However, as a Miles Scott 2020 point out, demand in many sectors is unlikely to return immediately following the crisis, and if the economic gradually reopen, supply and demand may rise in lockstep. That's all for me. Thank you.